New Yorkers are not subject to another tax. The bill would prohibit any city in the state from imposing any tax, fee, or other local charge on any carry-out merchandise bag. And that's because the City Council, as you may know, adopted unilaterally a plastic bag tax of a nickel a bag. And this unjust measure is scheduled to take effect unless we get rid of it. And that's why we have this bill here today. This bill is doing two things. One, the City Council decided to call this nickel a fee, not a tax, which it is, because they don't have the right to impose taxes on New Yorkers. So they couldn't call it a tax, they called it a fee. And this fee is going to unjustly, unfairly impose a tax on most New Yorkers. Now, I know that you're going to ask me why this bill is so important. And I myself, Mr. President, have never gotten so much feedback, whether it's petitions, whether it's phone calls, or whether people stopping me on the street about any other issue. And I dare say that I have had some decent issues other than this. More than any other issue, and I've heard the same experiences from many of my colleagues, people are upset about this nickel tax. And I'm trying to figure out why people are so upset. And it dawned on me. The sponsors of the bill, when they were asked about their city council bill, said that the purpose of their bill is to irritate New Yorkers into changing their behavior. I say that again. The purpose of the bill is to irritate New Yorkers to change their behavior. Well, New Yorkers do not appreciate that. New Yorkers do not like being manipulated, they do not like being aggravated, and they do not need government to irritate them. So the supporters of the City Council bill, who believe that it's their job to modify New York City residents' behavior by irritating them, that's why people are so upset about this nickel tax.
Senator
I'm finished if you
Senator
if you haven't realized.
I forgot my question.
Timing was good. Senator Hoylman.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator Felder, do you continue to yield? Senator
Yes.
Felder yields.
In the sponsor's memo, he cites a number of public health concerns is actually one of the reasons for objecting to the New York City plastic bag fee. He says in the memo that reusable bags present a serious public health issue and that reusable bags often present the risk of bringing into a store a contaminant of food-based disease, bacteria, or other illnesses which can cause serious cross-contamination or infection for both the customer, other customers, and even store employees. Would the sponsor tell me the source of his study?
I have many, through you, Mr. President, I have many studies, just like you will quote many studies to support your position. I'm holding a bunch of them. If you'd like me to read them all, I'd be happy to entertain you at the risk of alienating all my other colleagues.
Hoylman. How do you think I feel trying to figure out when he's ending?
Could the sponsor tell me specifically the assertion that plastic bags present a serious public health issue? Could he name the study one study where he sourced that information?
Through you, Mr. President, it's clear that my colleague doesn't believe me, so I certainly don't want him to have to trust me. The University of Pennsylvania, University of Arizona, and I have a whole series of other studies that talk about it.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Senator Felder, you yield?
Yes.
Senator Felder yields.
Is the sponsor aware that the study conducted at the University of Arizona was funded by the American Chemical Council?
By what?
The
I'm
American-
sorry. Through you, Mr. President. By what?
Senator Heilman?
The American Chemical Council.
The what? What did okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. No, I'm not aware, but so what?
Senator Heilman?
Does
On the bill?
not on the bill?
Okay.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Senator Felder, do you continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
So what? The American Chemical Council is the leading proponent, industry proponent of plastic bag use in these United States. Does the sponsor acknowledge that there could be a potential conflict of interest in the American Chemical Council's position on plastic bags?
Through you, Mr. President, I do acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that all the studies that support my colleague's position were probably done by advocates that support their position. And there might be a conflict of interest as well when some of the groups that are supporting your position, or I should say my colleague's position, are funded by these groups. So we can spend a long time going through this, and each of us will have the same questions for each other, and I'll be happy to do that.
Senator Heilman on the bill.
I wanted to thank my colleague for his insight on this issue and appreciate his answers. You know, there's a lot of hand-wringing over this legislation, over local legislation. I mean, you'd think the apocalypse is about to dawn on us. In fact, the same kind of angst has beset other countries and cities that have considered such a fee. In the UK, there was a hashtag actually called hashtag plastic bag chaos when they considered a fee on their bags. And folks were tweeting about plastic bag alternatives in the event that this fee would be imposed. You could use a cardboard box, a briefcase, the inside of your shirt, a swimming cap, a butternut squash with the seeds removed. And one person suggested that they would carry always a plastic bag tied to their wrist, just in case they forgot their bag. But the truth is, we've seen in other places where a fee, such as the one suggested by the New York City Council, has been imposed, it's been extremely successful and reduced plastic bag waste. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Ireland, anywhere from 60 to over 90% of plastic bag waste reduction in those countries and cities after a similar fee was imposed. Plastic bag use, I think, is a problem. New York City has proposed a solution. Other jurisdictions in the state are proposing the same. Suffolk, Newcastle, among others. The reason is because they can't wait for Albany. The sponsor's bill, Mr. President, is essentially a preemption with nothing in its place. It nullifies a local law, but it does nothing to address any problem. Albany has been hand-wringing over plastic bag laws for over 25 years, but we really haven't done much about it. So who are we to tell a local municipality that it can't address a pressing problem. Now, I get it. The city is a creature of the state. My friend Senator Savino has told me that many times. But we're preempting the city with nothing. We are taking, moreover, an unprecedented move of overturning a local law and nullifying a pro-environment piece of legislation. You've seen all of the advocacy organizations, Riverkeeper, the Nature Conservancy, Environmental Advocates of New York, Citizens Campaign for the Environment, the New York League of Conservation Voters, New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. All of them support the local bill proposed by the City Council. What kind of precedent are we setting when we start overturning local laws in cities and municipalities across the state? Once this chamber is over its obsession with New York City local laws, you can guarantee that they're going to be coming for you next, whether it's Suffolk, Newcastle, Corning, Pittsford. This is another example of Albany telling local governments that it knows better. It's Common Core for plastic bags. And we should let governments do what they do best. This bill was heard by the City Council in over three hearings, over 2 years of discussions. It passed with widespread support from communities across the 5 boroughs. We shouldn't interfere with what a local government decides is best for its citizens. I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kruger?
I guess it's still afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. President. If the sponsor would yield to some questions, please.
Senator Felder, do you yield to some questions from Senator Kruger?
Yes.
Senator Felder
Except
yields.
I won't answer any questions about carrying my groceries in hollowed butterscotch.
I promise not to ask any questions about carrying groceries in hollowed squash. Is that what we heard? Okay.
He would know better.
Senator Felder yields.
Thank you. So, Senator, as I read your bill, it would actually outlaw stores choosing to charge for carryout bags, and there are stores that do that now. Aldi's, IKEA, some of the like BJ's, Sam's, Costco type stores. So you would outlaw them charging for bags, which they do currently as part of their own internal policies at this point?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't believe in government interfering with private industry in general, because usually whatever government touches goes bad. So the bill does not state anywhere that we're trying to prohibit private businesses. They can charge as much as they want. In fact, if they think it's a good idea, let them charge $10 a bag if they think that's a good idea. This bill is correcting a terrible precedent that's being set by the City Council. And let me tell you, it's New York City first, and it's coming to you next, in that the state passes a law. The environmental advocates, and let me just say, I don't think there's anyone in this room that wants to hurt the environment. So, having said that, a few years ago, maybe more than a few, we used to use paper bags. And the environmental advocates came along and said, this is not a good thing. Let's use plastic bags. And those plastic bags will be able to be recycled. And at that same time, the state established a law that would mandate that stores have bins for recycling. Unfortunately, the city and the state have not enforced that law. So the City Council decided, in its infinite wisdom, that if a law is not being enforced, dump the law and make a new one. Well, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And it would be a terrible precedent for us to say, no problem. If there's a law that you don't like, figure out how to call something a fee instead of a tax, and everyone will be happy. So the answer to your question, in case you forgot it, was the stores can charge whatever they want.
Mr. President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Senator
Yes.
Felder, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
I would like to refer the sponsor to Section 3 of his bill, which states, no retail store may collect any charge, tax, or any other fee upon a customer in return for the provision of any carry-out merchandise bag. So while I'm glad to hear the sponsor says he doesn't want to intrude on business, I believe his bill would, because it says they can't charge for bags, and yet we have quite a few types of stores currently charging for bags. So I guess I'm re-asking the question. Did the sponsor intend his bill to prevent stores that currently charge for bags from being able to charge for bags?
Through you, Mr. President, I think that it would be helpful to read the entire paragraph. Prohibition on the collection of a tax, fee, or local charge on any carry-out merchandise bag. No wholesaler may collect any additional charge, tax, or any other fee upon a retail store for the provision of any carry-out merchandise bag other than the original cost of such bag as agreed between the wholesaler and the retail store for the purchase of such bag. Additionally goes on the last few sentences we just talked about, which was the prohibition on a tax or fee. No retail store may collect any charge, tax, or any other fee upon a customer in return for the provision of any carry-out merchandise bag. I would interpret that clearly as meaning that we're referring to a tax, not for a store to decide whether it wants to impose a fee for bags or anything else.
Mr. President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Yes.
He read the section and may not collect any charge, tax, or any fee from a customer. If I'm charging for a bag at my store, I am charging for a bag at my store, and this would be outlawing that. I don't see how this wouldn't outlaw that.
You, Mr. President, as I said the first time, it's related to the bill that we're talking about, which would prohibit the city or any city within New York State from imposing such tax.
3, Mr. President, if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Sponsor, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator Felder yields.
So I have to take disagreement with the sponsor about what the language and meaning of the language of his bill is, but I'm going to follow up with a continued question. If you read this bill as prohibiting stores from selling bags to take product out of their store, does that mean they can no longer sell reusable bags at the checkout counter? Most stores that I go into here in Albany, if they're food stores, or in New York City, they are selling reusable bags as a product in their product mix at checkout. So that would also become illegal because that would be selling bags to the customer to take merchandise out of the store.
Through you, Mr. President, I can't answer my colleague's question based on a premise that she established. We disagree upon what the law says. You're asking me what I would do if I interpreted the law the way you are interpreting. I can't answer that.
Through you, Mr. President, if the sponsor would you continue to yield.
Senator Felder, do you yield?
Yes, please.
Senator yields.
Thank you. The sponsor, in answering the questions of my previous colleague who was asking questions, talked about it's not okay to pass a bill just to irritate people. I would argue this is not a bill just to irritate people. Probably every bill the state legislature has ever passed and the city council has ever passed and county legislatures has ever passed irritates someone. Does the sponsor actually propose that a justification to override a municipality's policy is based on a personal analysis of the irritation level? Is that the basis of passing this bill? Nobody's ever irritated?
Through you, Mr. President, I wish that I had control of making sure that people weren't irritated. I might be able to run for statewide office. But I didn't say that. The sponsor of the bill said that. I don't think I've ever said that I sponsored any legislation to irritate people. I don't think that's the way you get reelected. But certainly, that's not the way you tell New Yorkers that something's good for you. Or you dictate to New Yorkers and you tell them, this is what you need, even though you don't think you need it, this is what you need. And the sponsor of the bill, not me, and certainly not you, said that the way this bill is supposed to work is that the goal is to irritate people into changing their behavior. I'm only trying to be honest. I'm quoting the sponsor of the bill. I would never want the sponsor of the bill to say simply, you lied. You didn't quote me correctly. That's one. And two, my colleague mentioned once again this bill trying to somehow take away, remove, or destroy something that a locality like New York City has done. I will repeat it again. This bill is doing something very important, as Senator Hoylman said, but he said it to support his position. My bill makes sure that we don't set a terrible precedent by saying the state passes laws and then any locality comes along and says, you know, we don't like it that much. We're going to do our own. That's not the way it works. I didn't make the Constitution. That's the Constitution of the state. The state has rights. The locality has rights. The rights of the locality is not to pick and choose what it likes or dislikes and then come up with its own laws.
Continue to yield.
Senator Felder, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
The sponsor, in explaining why he thought the state should override the local law, referenced his belief that this would have negative consequences for the people of New York City. If the research shows, which it does, that over 200 cities around the country have implemented variations on bring your own bag laws, and that they've gone into effect in roughly 80% of the households in all 200 cities across lines of race, income, age, and family size, have started bringing their own reusable bags back to the stores. Knowing that, would that influence the sponsors thinking about whether New York State ought to be superseding any locality in New York's right to pass a bill similar to the 200 other localities in the United States?
Through you, Mr. President, I will repeat as many times as necessary. New York State is not removing, not rescinding. I forgot all the words I used to describe New York City's law. Just the opposite. Just the opposite. New York City is imposing on its residents an unjust and unfair tax, not a fee, a tax, which we know a law has been passed a long time ago that said that stores have to have recycle bins. Now, if the sponsors of this bill want to ban plastic bags altogether, they should say so. And that they'd be allowed to do, I believe. But if they want to impose a tax, and let me be clear for anyone who has any question whether this is a tax or a fee, New York State's Constitution vests only in the state legislature. And the distinction between a fee and a tax is pretty clear. A fee is something that government charges for a service or product it provides. That is a fee. You go and you want to park on a street, and you have to put money in the meter. The government, or New York City in this case, is providing you with a space to park, and you have to pay for it. You go ahead and you need to get some permits or inspections or anything like that, and there's a charge. New York City is providing a service or a product, and in turn, you have to pay for it. That is a fee. But here, the government is not providing anything. New York City has decided that the retailer providing the bag, not the city, is going to collect money from you for each bag. That's not a fee. I'm sorry, that is not a fee, yes. That's a tax. A tax is where government uses its power to take your money and then decides how it wants it spent. And that's exactly what New York City is doing here. The fact that the city is not keeping the money doesn't make it a fee. It makes it a tax where the city is not keeping the money. So it's clearly a punitive measure to get people to change their behavior. And if we really wanted to encourage recycling, now I'm not suggesting this by any means, but my colleague Senator Savino always talks about the bottle bill. The bottle bill, the way it worked, is the state said if you want to buy a soda or anything like that, you have to put a nickel deposit, and if you bring back the bottle, you get your nickel back. And in fact, it's become so popular that there are many people who have made a living out of it. Many people don't want to bother. But that's how the state decided to encourage people to recycle, and they either do or don't. But if they decide to do it, they get their nickel back. In this case, the city is telling people clearly that it's a tax because they're not giving you your nickel back. They're not telling you to recycle it at the store. Oh, I forgot one other point that you might have wanted to ask me in the future. I forgot to tell all of us, tell everyone, that it's a misnomer to say that people in New York do not recycle their bags. I dare suggest that if you asked 100 New Yorkers randomly what they do with the plastic bags they get and they use to bring home their groceries, they will give you multiple answers. Some use it to get rid of diapers. Some use it to make sure that they clean up after their dogs. Some people give it to their kids to be able to take their lunch to school. Some people take their books to school. Very rare, I'm not going to tell you that there's no one, very rarely do people take their bags and just throw them in the garbage. I know in my own home we have the place where we keep bags for those types of uses. And I might add, people in apartment buildings, they don't go out and buy Glad or some other company garbage bags. They use bags. They put the bags in the garbage, they put the garbage in the bags, and then they bring it down